Hello and welcome to the Keto Man's Club podcast.
We're glad you're here, where each week we talk about men's health and lifestyle.
We do so with the foundation of the ketogenic diet and lifestyle.
If you don't know what keto is, stick around and you'll find out.
The podcast will bring you real, honest fun.
Each week we strive to uncover the tips and tricks that you can use in your everyday life to maximize your overall health.
Find the clearest path to becoming the best version of yourself that you were meant to be.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Keto Man's Club podcast. My name is Chris, and as always, I'm joined by Jim and Alberto. How's it going?
I'm good, sir.
Very cool. Alberto, what's new with you?
I messed around and played a stupid game and won a stupid prize, and I won a free entry to run a half marathon in 2 weeks. And first order of business is I should probably buy shoes to run in.
Yeah, probably. Shoes to run in that you haven't, actually just only done 5K on.
Well, those shoes are just beat down and done. So I have absolutely no shoes that are anywhere near the athletic realm, and something tells me that I shouldn't attempt this in my Vibram 5 fingers. 5K I've done in my Vibram 5 fingers. A half marathon might be pushing it.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine that would be the case.
Was this the grand prize, Alberto, or was this the consolation prize?
I don't even know. I might be the first loser. Sure.
Yeah. And then somebody on that thread that you posted about, hey, I might come down and join you. Maybe Chris can do it. And I'm like, nope, that's not going to happen. Just not going to happen. Jim, how about you?
Things are just hectic at work and whatnot. But the gates are opening up next week and things will get better and improve. I'm been very conscious over the last week or so. I'm doing this 8-week transformation challenge in Orange Theory Fitness, and trying to leave the workout at 8:00 at night and go home and not eat enough to feel full without feeling kind of thing, and doing some shopping and kind of rethinking keto and whatnot, and finding like an antipasta salad. Never would have thought about that, even though it had all the stuff in it. Saw it at the grocery store tonight, like, hey, I wonder, and Googled it real quick. Sure enough, that works. And sauteed mushrooms have become a favorite of mine in the last couple of weeks as well. So noticing some changes, staying off the scale until the challenge is up to see. But it's always nice when you notice a jacket feels a little bit looser or pants feel a little bit lighter. So all is good, man. How about you?
Well, I am currently in Studio Z. I'm up in Kansas City visiting my parents, and so I brought along my bare necessities of recording equipment and have my laptop. And so I am up here doing a little visiting. I have at least one, if not maybe multiple. I'm going to be pushing it pretty hard in the next couple of days. I know there are more people in the Midwest that could come to a meetup here, but unlike in Texas, 2-hour drives, no big deal. That's just like a daily commute. That's not how it is in Kansas City or anywhere in the Midwest for that matter. Everything is 15 minutes away. So with that being said, I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a couple more guys together on Saturday. I know I'm going to have one or two meet me at Joe's Kansas City, but Kansas City barbecue, and we'll have a good time. Barbecue will be had. It will be fun. It will be good regardless of however many people show up.
I want to ask one thing of you, because I noticed posted this up. Axe throwing?
Axe throwing, yes.
Is this a Texas thing? This is not an Indiana thing.
Well,
so I'm just kind of curious what prompted that as a activity for you.
I've seen and heard about it both in my Kansas City and Texas circles. I've actually been researching the Texas locations for our Keto Men's Club meetup during KetoCon. And so it's kind of this thing where it's kind of like bowling alleys, only instead of throwing a bowling ball down an alley, you have a wood target that you throw axes at for an hour and a half or so. And so I've got a couple of my friends, and we're trying to get a group together, and we're probably going to just rent out one of their lanes for an hour and a half or so tomorrow night, and it'll be a good time of men being men, and it'll be good.
Okay. No judgment. I just was surprised when I saw it. Like,
Yeah, it's a thing.
thing.
Now, I would probably say that it's probably more so a thing in towns that have a higher hipster population, like Kansas City and Austin. Just because hipster guys apparently like to, make sure that they're being masculine enough, I think. But
so you have to wear skinny jeans and dress shoes with no socks in order to participate.
No, because Danny Vega was doing it, and very definitely not that. He did have his Ron Swanson button up on, so
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that should be fun, and so yeah. Hint. One of the ideas that I have for our KetoCon men's meetup would be at Axe Alley in Austin, because that could be a lot of fun. So yeah, that's what's new with me, and it's going to be a good week of getting to be around family and see all friends and family and go to all the church events and things like that. Get to see people I haven't seen in a year and all that. So it'll be good.
Good.
And getting to stay keto on the way, which actually hasn't been that hard. I've had steak 2 times and good burgers 2 times in the 48 hours that I've been in town. So it's going pretty good in that regard so far. Well, let's get into our shout outs. I'm going to save mine for last because I want to springboard from it into a keto related topic. Jim, who do you have this year?
This year?
This week. It's been a long year this week.
My shout out is to Tony Serrano, who posted up this week a Transformation Tuesday photo, 370 pounds down to 240. Said part of that part of that weight loss came from trying to treat what it has done sleep apnea, and then more than 100 pounds of that has been from 11 months on keto. So big shout out to him. He's got the before and after picture in the group, and it's a pretty night for the guy. I mean, you wouldn't even know it's the same guy. So shout out Tony from Alamogordo, New Mexico. That's mine.
Very cool. Alberto?
I got a member, Dave Lawton. He posted quite the transformation picture. He didn't give any stats, but he went from pretty big to not big at all, and that's definitely commendable.
Absolutely. Any movement in that direction, that's an outward sign of interchanges, and that's always a good thing in my personal view of things. I want to shout out one of our members, Jacob, in the beginners group, and this isn't he's done great. He's asking a really good question, one that we get often, and so that's why I'm bringing it up. Is I want to have us talk a little bit about how we would answer that particular question. He says, thoughts on relatively easy lunches I can eat on the road. Currently, I do salami and pepperoni with cheese and green peppers. I sometimes add almonds. I'm not a fan of Quest bars, but maybe I will use them if I need to. And so this is a question that comes up in both groups pretty often on ideas for eating on the road. Now, Big Yogi Parker, he is the king of food on the road, but of course he's driving around with a small apartment in his truck all the time. So that's a little helpful with him, and he chimes in. But let's go around the horn real quickly, and then we'll actually pull in our guest, see if he has any ideas on this as well. But Jim, what would you suggest?
Oh gosh, on the road. I guess I hate to say there's so much stuff out there. I guess there is. You caught me off guard, Chris. I'm passing. I'm going to pass my note back to Alberto and let him start.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. If he's just trying to drive around and pick some up on the go, or if he has the opportunity to pre-pack and get things going. Because when I head out of town, I really don't prepare much of anything. I just kind of rock and roll and go with it. But any huge gas station will have pickles, mixed nuts, plain pork rinds, that kind of thing, and you can make a meal out of enough of that if you need to. But if he's trying to like legitimately like make himself a meal that he can take on the go, that's where it gets that's where it gets a little tricky. But hard-boiled eggs travel well. Bacon actually surprisingly travels well. Olives travel well. If he's going for enough to hold him over, or if he's trying to make a solid meal out of it. But I mean, in my travels throughout all over Texas, there's always a Wendy's. I'll just pull into a Wendy's and just get a bunch of hamburger patties, and I'm perfectly content eating hamburgers every day of my life.
Yep.
I've got no issue with that at all. And then, especially being out here, you don't got to go very far to bump into a barbecue joint if that's what you want to do.
Yep. And the nice thing about Texas barbecue, unlike Kansas City barbecue, they don't put sauce on it. It's salt, pepper in the smoker. All the flavor comes from the smoke. And so Kansas City barbecue is a little bit more about the sauce. So my carb intake from barbecue this week will probably be a little bit higher than it normally would be, but I'll gladly make that sacrifice. I just may not add a whole bunch of extra sauce on top of the sauce it was cooked with. So my views on it are very similar to Alberto's, and I if I go to the gas station, I'm looking for plain pork rinds. I'm looking for beef jerky that doesn't have a massive metric ton of sugar added to it. If there's a little bit, I know it's used in the cooking process. And I guess I'm probably a little lenient on what some people would call trace carbs, because I'd rather have the protein content and not go for something completely fake than actually just go for a protein Quest bar or something like that. I do eat the Quest bars or the low carb protein bars at times, but that's definitely not my go-to. That's usually my version of a sweet treat or my way of getting away from the candy bar aisle and actually eating something that might have some nutritional value for me. So that's my on the road. Jim, do you have anything else?
Well, now that I'm not taking notes like I go, so what about grocery stores? I mean, I'm a fan of this, but I know it's individual taste, like canned chicken. Because one of the things that I've discovered in the last week or so that I really enjoy is like a buffalo chicken dip. It's fairly low carb, the one that I found at Sam's Club. Not that I'm eating like the whole bucket or anything all at once, but just as like keep it in the fridge at work, get a couple spoonfuls when you need a fix kind of thing or something like that. But the canned chicken, and I don't know if that's good or not, but I mean, that might even be something just to hit a protein if you need it like that. And there's canned tuna, there's different things like that. So I don't know if that might work for somebody.
Yeah, I know that in some other podcasts that I've edited before that were all about food, one of the things that they talked a lot about was sardines and how they're very rich in some very necessary nutrients and minerals specifically that the body needs. And so if you can get into it, and Carrie Brown was actually one of the hosts in that podcast, and she just keeps a couple cans of sardines in her glove compartment, because if she ever gets hungry, that's something that she can just pull out. And if you fold it right, you can actually use the lid as your spoon. Yeah. So yeah, I learned a lot in that episode. I'm not big on fishy fish, which has been my deterrence, but apparently they don't always have to be super fishy with that. So, that's another suggestion that I've picked up along the way. I just haven't ever put in action. I will stop by Five Guys or a Mighty Fine any day. I had and it's on the local menu at the Mighty Fine Burgers in the Austin area. I'm not sure if that's just a regional thing or not, but they have a burger that's called the Beast with cheese, and it's a pound, 2 half-pound patties instead of their normal quarter-pound patties. So they'll put them, squash them together, make 2 half-pound patties. So you get a full pound of meat, and you can get that in a bowl and with cheese and add bacon to it. And yes, it was probably like $12, but it was very worth the $12. So
yeah, I just had one of those last week actually.
Yep. So I had and it ends up being cheaper to do that than it does to buy 2 of the half-pound burgers that they have on the traditional menu. So you won't see it on the board, but if you ask them about the Beast with cheese, they can usually do it, at least again in the Austin area. That's something for sure.
The one thing, and I don't want to take too much time away from our guests, but the one that I learned, my kind just got an IHOP a couple weeks ago, and I'm not advocating, I'm not go get pancakes or anything, but I went with a couple friends, and and looked at the omelets. Like, okay, there's sausage, there's bacon, the eggs and everything. But then I remember something from the group. Somebody said that the eggs have pancake batter mixed in or something like that.
Omelet mix.
So I asked
they do an omelet mix that actually has pancake mix in it to help it be fluffy.
Yeah. So I asked her, I said, is this true? And they went, I don't know. They went back and asked, yes, it is. So I had them do an omelet for me, direct eggs. And so it is possible, but it's also one of those things that you think you're doing it right, but then you find out they're like, oh, there's something in there that I didn't know about, kind of thing. So it just takes a little bit of investigation sometimes.
Yep. You got to be a little careful on that. But it's good that they were willing to work with you and actually, make sure that it wasn't mixed in. That's good.
Yep.
Okay. So our guest this week is Zach Williams, and we're going to dig into his story in a moment. But Zach, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so, what are your go-tos on the road? What do you suggest on all this?
Yeah, actually, before I do that, I just kind of wanted to get a few things out of the way. At first, just wanted to thank you guys for inviting me on this show. I was somewhat embarrassed by the request, but delighted at the same time. I think I found a camaraderie in the group when I first joined, and I saw Berto in his five-fingered shoes. So I was like, all right, I'm in the right place. And also, side note to your shout out, Tony Serrano is actually a buddy of mine through some other channels, and he had a particular experience in another group, which I won't mention by name, but when he came and talked to me about it, I actually just realized, join the Keto Man's Club, and he asked me something to the effect of, are they conceited douchebags? And I said, no, not at all.
Good to know.
So I think it's great that my time on the show, he's the guy that's first called out. So that's awesome.
I will be sending him a present regarding that now.
That's gotta be one of the entrance questions now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. In order to get you, or are you not?
Okay, so again, thank you. But on the subject of eat when you're on the road, admittedly, I don't do much travel, but if I was to take a stab at it, I subscribe to the Keto Gains thought process around optimal nutrition. So, there are everything that you can eat and everyone can enjoy success, but there's always a potentially best way to do it. And in my mind, it's about creating a nutrient profile as best you can. So I think someone mentioned tuna, right? Like you can keep cans of tuna or sardines in your glove compartment. So that's easy. And you can go to a gas station and there's always packets of mayonnaise. You can make a quick one. If you carried a little bottle of olive oil with you, a tablespoon is about 130 calories, good fats. And, you could quickly add it to the mix. And in a gas station, you could find, your celery or, some other comparable vegetable. So, you make the proportions correct. And, right there, you've got a complete meal with, your heavy protein, medium to high fat, and, a good vegetable source with, the proper nutrient profile. But at the same time, you can always go to like Berto said, the hamburger joints, and you can always request, more vegetables along with, or say requesting one slice of cheese versus two. And, you can make quite a complete and decent meal out of that. And I think a few people mentioned the pork rinds. I would definitely put that on my list no matter what, because, the fat is good. And so, there's some nutrients in there because it comes from pork, but it's also rich in collagen too, which is, some people might say an important, maybe even fourth macro on the ketogenic diet. So, between, eating the pork rinds and, whatever combination that I just listed, you have, in my opinion, a very respectable, complete ketogenic meal on the go.
I would agree with that. And I agree. I'm not hardcore into specifically the Keto Gains protocols. But I've read them over, and I absolutely believe that there's a valid point of view, and their focus on nutrient density is absolutely a good thing, because sometimes you get too caught up on the keto treats and the things that are not necessary, and they do a good job of calling people to the importance of needing more than just that. So, Okay, well, let's dig into your story. Go ahead.
Let me do one last thing on the ketogenic protocol, so I set the record straight. I like everything that they talk about. I believe that there is a significant amount of evidence in what they say, and I look at it as, sort of my not my come all be all, but it's what I lean towards when given the. But in no way, am I a saint? I respect that. Sometimes convenience is necessary, but whenever given the choice, that's the model I want to pursue. Sure. Does that make sense? It's not a rule. I'm not a strict keto versus a lazy keto guy. It's kind of like I'm in between.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that's probably where I would say that I am. I'm 3 years into this journey at this point, and so I'm pretty much on autopilot most days, and don't worry about the minutia that people can sometimes get caught up on.
Amen.
Okay, so let's talk about you for a bit. So tell us a little bit about your life, health wise and non health wise, leading up to you finding keto and what that all has been like.
Oh gosh, where do I start that question? Well, I guess at the basics, I was born and raised in Taipei, Taiwan. 34 now. I'm of mixed heritage. So my father is white American. My mother is Taiwanese Chinese. And I came when I was 16. When it comes to health, I suppose I was gifted with good genes, but I got into a little bit of trouble and maybe leaned on that facet a little too much. To not bore you with the details, I think what you're asking, my why for doing keto. So, to put it simply, 6 years or so, I've been working in a number of fields, most recently in medical education and cannabis tech. And yeah, I got, disillusioned with people. I began coping with it in poor ways. I won't, go into the details, but at, one point around a year and a half ago, I, the musculature in my body had gotten to a point. I've actually never told anybody this part because it's a little humiliating, but I had let a few things go for shutting myself away if I didn't need to go out and, work, if you will, that I could sleep in a wrong position and something would shift in my mid lower back and I would have searing pain up and down my posterior chain for, weeks at a time. Couldn't fix it. And then at one point I got pneumonia, and because of, I guess, my, behavior patterns up until that point, I, whether it's a immortality complex or, something even more trivial, I, just kind of assumed it was just a fever and I just let it go. And my father found me 3 days later on my couch with a 105-degree temperature. So, I was pretty much that close to passing away. It was rather humiliating, actually, because, if I can swear on this show, it was the result of me being a useless piece of shit. And when I recovered, I felt I'd been given a new lease on life. But, making change was difficult. I went back into the gym and I tried to, beat my body back into shape like it had once been when I was younger. But you guys probably are aware, as you grow older, if you're not living smart, the cycle of, let's get healthy and then let's, eat our way to shit, it grows more and more in favor of the shit spectrum. So nothing was really working the way that I wanted. And then I remember mine had told me about keto. And so I said, well, that's curious. Let me look. And I spent about 2 or 3 months. Once I got started, it kind of snowballed because it was so fascinating to me. I just started researching ketosis. I became fascinated with all of the health applications that I was discovering for it. Start as a treatment for childhood epilepsy to, implications for treating Alzheimer's and even autoimmune disorders. And I, at about 2-month period, all right, so let me just plan on how to do this. And I spent about a month formulating the plan. And then, about a year and a half ago, I kicked the start button. And yeah, here I am now talking to you guys, just, completely infatuated with the lifestyle in the community.
So how did you find out about it? What or other than just the basic research, was it something that someone brought to you, or was it something you just kind of happened on?
There was a previous boss when I did in local politics had done keto, and I had dabbled in like intermittent fasting and what have you, and seemed somewhat similar, but I just couldn't wrap my mind around the idea of ditching carbohydrates. Didn't make any rational sense to me at times, so I never really pursued it. But like I said, given my situation at the time, dramatic changes seemed in order. So when I remembered keto, I said, well, it really can't be anything more dramatic than that. So I decided to take a look. And if you're asking where to start getting my information, I'll be the first to admit that it was the internet gurus on, YouTube, like Thomas DeLauer and Jason Fung and so on and so forth.
No, that's awesome, man. It's good that you were able to away and find something. And more importantly, it's good that you're able to stick with it, because it's not easy. You're trying to change everything around for the better. Level of a commitment that most people can definitely not understand.
Well, if I may, like maybe try to explain why I think keto really changed, or keto was different. There was something really fundamental about what I needed to figure out in order to understand ketogenics, right? Like I like asking the question why about things. And as I dug deeper into ketogenics, the questions just kept on compounding. It was like, well, why is ketogenic good? Okay. Well, why does it happen? Okay. Well, what makes it happen? What are the nuances that prevent it from happening? And like, if I was using a way of my body composition, exercise was obviously a part of that. So it was, well, what changes about exercise when you're living ketogenically? And then now it's like, well, how can you augment that by, slightly adapting your approach with, you guys are aware of TKD, all those other folks, right? So it's upwards from, of like the foundational understandings. My understanding of how it works, it translated into how I live, in that same branching process where the rules and regulations of it kind of help clarify what I'm supposed to do, given that like once I know what happens and how it happens, I can start making choices based on what I want. And interestingly enough, regimented, it sounds complicated, it sounds overbearing, but I found it frankly rather liberating, because it's taken a lot of guesswork out of my life, just by like understanding how to live ketogenically properly.
So I want to ask you something here, Zach, kind of taking it back a little bit to the beginning, so to speak, because we've asked different guests in the past, their family history and whatnot. So were anybody in your family a big kid or a big person? Or did you have a weight issue growing up or anything like that? Because, you've been really honest and open about some challenges that you've had in the last few years. Just wondering if that stems from, things growing up, so to speak, or, what kind of the early days is, I guess.
Well, I think so. When it comes to weight problems, I didn't really have one. I was gifted with good genes, except for the tail end of my, previous life. I think I mentioned that vicious cycle of, trying to rely on your genes while not living smart, and eventually bad habits catch up to you, right?
Sure.
So, at the low point, I was 205 pounds, never been above it, even at my like worst, $190. So that was shocking. And, FYI, that 205 for me was a little bit, because I think I talked about the lack of musculature. So, I actually, though I wore body fat going on, then would have met the eye. But anyway, that's kind of a tangent to your question. My background and what maybe led to what happened I started keto is probably a function of people don't know what the hell to make of me. I'm half Chinese. I grew up in Taiwan. When I'm over there, I'm the white guy. When I'm over here, I'm the Asian guy. I have a fair amount of interest naturally, so I can be on my playlist when I go to the gym, but I can post on Facebook about like cello concertos, and I do a Sinatra tribute show, and I also do ballroom dancing. So I'm just like a complete mix mush. And for a long time, it was just one of the things where you put it in, right? But then you also want to be your own person. And sometimes those two conflict with each other. So I think a lot of my bitterness leading up to it was was trying to conform and being upset that I had to. It sort of begot like a very low opinion of people in general, though I actually am a very nice guy and I do like really like people. So yeah, I think just the dichotomy of, trying to live a double life, if you will, and being upset as to why you need to, put me at the low point where I almost died.
So let's talk about the recovery from that. You got into keto, you did the research, you get on fire for it. What has been your physical response? We'll talk more about your physical feats that you share with the group and whatnot here in a bit. But just what was that journey like for you in recovering and restoring back to the place that at least you were before, if not far better?
Good question. Well, I think the first thing that started happening was, dropping the body fat rather quickly. But then I got confused when I started feeling lousy, started feeling better once I learned that it was possibly an electrolyte imbalance, which was fascinating in of its own right when I discovered that. Going from, like the internet gurus talking about not the need to adequate amounts of protein because somehow ketosis is muscle sparing, to like losing weight and then getting to like 162 pounds and getting tired of people saying I was getting small. And so I went looking for like, how does one weight gain? And I discovered that what I did for about 6-7 months was probably misguided. And then I set out to, put the muscle back on, and to my delight found that it was rather possible. Then moving from there, it was really interesting learning about, the need for salt when you go exercise. And even more fascinating when I discovered the TKD protocol. To describe how that felt, it was like the difference between using gasoline and then all of a sudden converting it into jet fuel. Actually, funny story there. Certification in primal health coaching, and I documented my attempt at TKD in that forum, and then Luis Villaseñor himself responded and explained to me what it was doing and fixed up a couple of my wrong moves, in particular the salt intake. And then my very next workout was just even more bombastic than the first time I did TKD. And so I guess to answer like physically, how does it work for me? It's just been one delightful surprise after another, all the like different ways that, through a targeted nutrition approach, you can augment how your body experiences itself ketogenically.
I was just going to add to that, like, absolutely. And it's, and I had just made a post in the beginners group about the food, and I had posted up that like reverse transformation. Like when I lost all my initial weight, like I dropped down to 166 and I was like super lean, but I was not happy with the way I looked. Same thing. I started getting all the comments about getting too scrawny and you're not eating enough and you don't look healthy. And I felt fine, but I just looked all wired and it felt like I was just, so, saying the same as you were saying, just by able to tweak some things and, with a decent metabolism and strictly manipulate food, I was able to get to a size more comfortable. And, being 40 years old and a veteran lifter, to be able to experience what some newbie gains, the amount of weight I was able to add, it's a pretty phenomenal to consider.
Absolutely. And on the subject of metabolism, Berto, you're a freak of nature when it comes to how many calories you can put on a not balloon. Just gonna throw it out there.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
We really don't like him. We'll just leave it at
that. Yeah. Someday I want to be like Berto and be able to eat that. I'm not sure I can.
That'll be t-shirt number 2. Be like Berto.
Be like Berto. Oh, I like that.
Eat like Berto.
Eat like Berto. Yeah. Okay, Jim, you were saying something.
That's great.
Oh, I don't even know. No. So you talking about all the physical transformations, everything, and going to keto. So obviously you had some internal struggles as well. So did keto brighten the day a little bit for you, kind of thing, or what did you see emotionally and in your head as you got on that keto journey?
Well, to be perfectly honest, if we're just talking about very basically, because it's been a long process with a lot of contributing factors, right? I think that keto was one of the more important ones in that it finally made me feel like I had clarity about what to do, right? I'm iconoclastic, I guess, too, just naturally. And so picking something that is in a minority group, people that don't know, like kind of shun it because they don't understand, it's perfect for me because I can literally just walk around and be like, yeah, like look at everything that's happening to me. You can't tell me I'm not healthy, off on that. What I said about my struggles, just like terms with being okay by being different, and that's just fine. Doing keto was a very easy way for me to do that and feel proud that I was doing everything I could to do it properly with sophistication and real attention to detail, so that I'm not in the category of person who just thinks that because I stop eating carbs, I'm healthy. That I've taken all of that into consideration, and I can refute the notion that genetics is unhealthy provided you do these things. It was a big confidence builder in that regard. So knowing that I had that kind of power over my own life, and an ability to communicate that outward, and was a very big step in making me become comfortable in my own skin again.
So you may have mentioned it, but I totally missed the timeline on all of this. So how long ago was it that you found the ketogenic way and kind of reclaimed your life and all this?
About a year and a half, give or take, like a month. It was about 3 months from that point that I really got going in it. But that's a time frame within which I don't have it timestamped or anything. That's not as important to me as the fact that I just started it for take.
Sure. Okay. So let's and I think you touched on this a little bit, but let's talk more about how family has reacted now. You talked about some of the cultural things already a little bit. Let's dig into that a little deeper. How has family reacted? Have they supported? Have they balked? What's kind of been the response that you've gotten?
Well, it was a slow burn, but like everybody else around me, you can't argue with results, right? And I have been insistent that I'm not just a cheerleader, that there's some very real merit to why I've decided to live my life as predominantly a fat burner. So slowly, the information has begun to sunk in. I remember when my mother finally watched Fat, a documentary, she freaked out that everything she'd ever been taught about nutrition was wrong. My younger brother is now starting keto, and he just hit a milestone himself. And so no one can argue with the fact that he looks healthier, sounds healthier, acts healthier, and so on and so forth. My older brother has a background in personal training and worked in medical education, is now connecting the dots between the mechanisms that allow ketosis, the deficiencies that you can accommodate for, and why the idea that you have to eat carbohydrates to sustain yourself doesn't actually make any sense. So I would say overall it's been very positive. One say that at the very beginning I was met with a fair amount of skepticism.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that everyone probably was. And even now, the amount of misinformation that's out there, because I'm still active in a bunch of just random groups, and some of them are just just fitness related groups, just overall in general, and some of them are more on the IBD side. And someone brings up keto, and then just the amount of people that just come in and bash it, just with nothing like to back it up. They're like, don't do a fad diet. Like all that fat's bad for you. I'm like, I was kind of like, well, the fat part's a choice. And then the comment that I always make that always gets people kind of stuck, because I was like, all right, let's assume you got dropped in the middle of the woods right now and you had to survive strictly on your own devices. Guess what diet you would fall into? And then, you know,
Right.
and then you put it that way, and
That's a great
they
point.
yeah, they can't argue because you're gonna eat what's available. If you kill an animal, you're gonna eat the animal. If you find vegetables or fruits or whatever, it's gonna be what's growing above ground because you're probably not gonna be doing a whole lot of digging. And then there you go. There's your ketogenic diet.
Yeah, man. It's really funny. The misinformation, the skepticism. I love a number of talks from Luis Villasenor, who points out often that in bodybuilding, ketogenics has been practiced for quite some time. Actually, when they especially go through their cutting phase, they just didn't call it that. So it's not necessarily a fad diet. Not to mention the history of it, but people have been doing it for meeting their goals for centuries.
Yeah.
What would you say has been, Zach, the easiest part of going keto? Because a lot of people, when they switch over or make that transition to keto, it's this whole, well, I've got to give up this and blah, blah, blah. But I'd like to hear a positive spin on what was the simplest part for you to do it?
So I wouldn't say it was simple exactly.
Okay.
But I would say that I have a tendency to run into pain. That's how I've gotten my best work done in anything that I've ever done. And I think in keto that it's no exception. When I started, I ate bacon and eggs pretty much every day for like 2 weeks, and by the end of 2 weeks, I couldn't look at another steak or another egg, or I would throw up.
Right.
And I'm Taiwanese, right? We prize food and flavor greatly, and it was at that moment where I realized that if I couldn't enjoy flavors, then like regardless of how good this diet was for me, I don't think I could stick with it. So rather than just give up and assume that I couldn't, I said, well, how can I? And went to recreate ketogenic ingredients, and fortunately, I've discovered that it's quite possible. Like I'm Asian, so we love rice, right? While I can't say that cauliflower rice is like rice by itself, I can tell you that if I season it like a lot of our fried rices are, it's almost indistinguishable, or at least 80% of the way. When it comes to the main focus, the protein, I love protein, and when it comes to the fat, I never really liked eating fatty meat, but if I needed fats, I could add it in multiple ways, like bacon fat or pork belly fat. I would save it and I would use it for cooking. I think the positive spin that I would give it is that the bulk items are rather delicious, and if you just exercise a little elbow grease and use a little creativity, there's not very many things that can't enjoy that have a ketogenic spin on them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, one of my favorite things. I don't make it very often because I'm just not really big on sweets. But I stumbled, and this has quite more sweetener in it than I care to consume on most times. But I stumbled across a completely like flourless avocado brownie recipe. Like I mean, it's delicious. I just on the rare occasion that I want it, like I'll make it, I'll eat it. And I mean, outside of a decent amount of sweetener, and I'm like, this thing is based with avocado, and it is really really good.
So,
well, on the subject of baking, I just wanted to say, and like, there is a story as to why I'm also a baker. I mean, seriously, like, of all the things that anybody could say that I would become, a baker is not one of them. But that's a funny story in itself. But side note on ingredients, see, that's what's kind of interesting to me about ketogenics. Is originally I was of the mind that ketosis discriminated against ingredients, but then I realized that no, ketosis doesn't discriminate against ingredients. Ketosis is all about carb restriction. I think someone mentioned trace carbs, right? Like, or if maltodextrin is an ingredient in something. Like, you could be a purist and say you don't want to eat it, but the fact of the matter is that if there's so little maltodextrin in something that it doesn't like register as a carbohydrate, you can get away with eating it. So similarly, vital wheat gluten is the protein from wheat removed of all the carbohydrates, and that's what gives bread and what have you its buoyancy. So if you don't mind gluten, which I don't, a lot of baked goods now take on a completely different profile when you live ketogenically, since you can now actually make them not only taste but feel like a bread product.
Absolutely. So, what is the day in the life for you in regards to fitness, and then also food, and how those fit together?
Okay, so I'll describe a full day. This isn't every day, but I'll wake up at 5 a.m. I first thing I'll do is I'll walk into my kitchen and I'll put salt in a glass of water with a little bit of low sulfur potassium. Drink that right down. I'll take a shower and then I'll come back out and I will mix my 25 grams of whey protein, half a teaspoon of salt. I will drink a pre-workout that I have mixed with a little bit more potassium. I will drink that all down and I will wait about 10 minutes and walk to the gym and I'll get in a really great workout before 7 a.m. hits. I'll come back and then I'll make myself, a modest breakfast since I just had the protein, which would be, I don't know, tuna fish with celery or bacon and eggs and kimchi. I love kimchi. Then I'll go, on my day to work. And at the time I might have kimchi fried rice with bacon or pork belly or some other form of meat. I passed the point where I'm tracking all of my macros. I have kind of like, I think Luis Villaseñor called it the matrix effect, where you see food and you just calculate numbers.
That's 100% true.
Right? You know what I mean, right? So
yeah,
I just kind of eyeball it, and when depending on whether I'm in a bulking phase or a cutting phase, I kind of know that I need to add like just a little bit more of this, olive oil or what have you, into whatever I'm eating, or if I'm cutting, it's like less, maybe more protein. But I try to get the complete mix of vegetables, protein, and fats, depending on what proportions, with every meal. I'll have that lunch. I'll get back to work, and then if this is like a Wednesday or a Friday, I'll usually have a dance lesson towards like 7:30 or 8, which I would say you might be able to characterize as a quasi steady state cardio. Not exactly, but it's certainly not a HIIT or like lifting protocol. So I'll do that. It'll end at around like 8:30, maybe 9, and I'll go back home. And at that point, it's kind of who knows. I might eat simply with just the tuna fish and whatever. If I'm if I'm bored of that, I will cook something for myself, whether it's a piece of meat and vegetables. I'm on a collard green stir fry kick right now, actually. And then I'll get ready for bed. And at this point, this is going to sound kind of funny to you guys, but I mentioned that I don't track my macros as much as I used to. So what I actually do now is I judge how hungry I am, before bedtime, because I found that because the fat is the issue, right? It's not the protein and it's not the carbs. The fat is where we get the most of our calories, and if you want to maintain a certain body composition, that's the thing that you have to pay attention to. You can't get too little of it or you'll shrink, and you can't get too much of it or you'll bloat. And the fun part for me is that I don't particularly need to eat fat, since it's kind of not the thing that I look for in my meals. So it's something that I can either add or subtract in tablespoons. So at that point, I'll ask myself, am I hungry still? If I'm not, then I'll just go to bed. But if I am, I will probably take, a tablespoon of MCT oil, or I might make myself like a bottomless pizza. Because the real reason why I do that is that, if my calories are too low, then I'll have trouble sleeping. It's a sort of like a low calorie induced insomnia. So that's a day in the life of Zach Williams.
Very cool. So what the fitness regimen that you do now, you're definitely very fit now. I've seen, I was looking over your profile a little bit ago and was remembering the videos that you've posted of handstand push-ups and things like that. What's kind of your favorite part of that regimen? What's your, with all of that?
That's a multi-tiered question.
Yes.
So I wanted the body composition. I wanted the aesthetic, but I didn't want it at the sacrifice of, athleticism and mobility. I had previous background in trying to break dance, and, I liked body weight exercises growing up. So, I started there, but it didn't allow me to grow the way that, regular lifting, training would. So then I found Athlean X, which is Jeff Cavalier, and his whole philosophy around if you want to look like an athlete, you must train like an athlete. I identified with that as a concept, and so I began, watching a lot of his videos, and to my delight, he went into such detail that I was able to, pursue the aesthetic that I wanted, but at this time fix a lot of my imbalances, if you will. And that also brings me to the third tier of this, and that is the dancing. Now, just to back up a little bit, the dancing was part of my, when I got started on ketogenics, it was a kick that I got on. I almost died, and I had a difficult recovery, and I became of a mind that like life's too short and I need to be proactive about things. So rather than being apprehensive at the things that that were foreign to me, if it even remotely made me curious, I would, pursue it in the hopes that I might love it. And so the dancing was one of those that, I grew up watching these old movies and I used to see these guys, take a woman on the floor and dance. And I was like, wow, that's suave and sophisticated. That's kind of cool. But, I never went for it. This time I did. Nice story about that is the fifth lesson, it was around Christmas time, and I had Christmas dinner with my grandmother, and I told her about this, and she told me a story about when she was a child and during the Depression. Her dream was to study at the Arthur Murray dance school, and her father only could afford her oboe lesson. So she said, if I will pay for your lessons if you go dance for me. So now I have the lessons paid for by my grandmother, and I do what I can to do it well so that I can send her the videos and stories and do just what I said, right? So the dancing is an interesting, let's call it a hobby. It's actually very physical. The dance studio I go to is Arthur Murray, Cambridge. It's run by a woman named Kia Kenny, and she's got some of the most colorful group of people working for her that you've ever met. Side note to just colorful people, it was a great place for me because reintroduction back into general society, so to speak. The nicest people you ever met attend dance schools, I'm convinced. Well, I made a lot of great friends, and so back to the physicality of it, it requires movement through the 3D plane, if you will. Posture is highly prized, but so is mobility in a very physical but elegant way. And so I use that as a barometer for the training. If there was a move that I was supposed to do, I would first think, not do I have rhythm in it, but is there a muscular weakness going on that's preventing me from being able to step? First it might have been my calves, and then it was my lower back, and then it was my core, then it was the section that you work doing face pulls. Anyway, I'd identify those, and then I would go and look at Jeff Cavalier's videos and try to find the answer to how I could strengthen them. And I did that back and forth, throughout the entire process. I would always look to ensuring that as I grew to the aesthetic I wanted, it wasn't sacrifice, the mobility and grace, if you will, that's required of the dancing, back and forth. I don't even think those guys at the dance studio even appreciate that I really look at everything I do there very closely to, like the human body and what it should or should not be doing with respect to athletics.
Well, let me tell you, I keep a beat and I have a little bit of musical knowledge. And fun fact, I won a dance competition for charity about 10 years ago that was put on by our local Arthur Murray. So it was a fundraising kind of thing. Yeah. So there were six competitors each year. You raise money for different charities in the community and whatnot, but then do a foxtrot, a swing, and an other, and you claimed your other, so nobody else could do it. So I did a samba. There was a lady who had a background that did a polka. So everybody did their own in the end. And I'm getting exactly what you're putting down here about the movement and everything, because I don't know that I could go to a wedding and dance, but I know how to, like you tell me to put my arm here on count 1 and put my leg here on count 2. I can do that. So there's right. I'm with you right there. So yeah,
it's fascinating. There's a guy that he's GM of studios His name is Christian Leitner. And, I remember the first time I saw him dance, I was absolutely fascinated with what I was seeing because he really graceful. But when he's doing their pro show, you can tell that the guy is exerting himself to pull off, this controlled move in a smooth way through space. And I just remember, like, first time I saw that, I was, man, like, that does not look like, they say that, like, dancers should make it look easy. He made it look easy, but his face told me that, no, there was something really intense going on as he was doing it. And it made me respect very much right there the physicality of it all.
Yeah. Well, we want to be respectful of your time, but I want to ask one more question here before we start wrapping things up. Talking about your, the challenges over the last few years and what, obviously you found the group in some way, shape or form on Facebook. We always talk about the fun stuff of the group and everything like that. But if somebody is not in the Keto Man's Club, tell our listeners a little bit about how it impacted you. Like, what have you gotten out of being in that group?
The Man's Club?
Yeah.
Well, when people ask me what is the Keto Man's Club, I say, well, it's a safe place for ketogenic men. So, Berto and, David and Chris and everybody's created, a wonderful group, very friendly, very supportive, very diverse. I'll be frank. It's probably one of, if not the most comfortable groups, in the ketogenic community that I've seen with respect to both, understanding of ketogenics and just general attitude. So, I would tell anybody that isn't, in the Keto Man's group, if they're live ketogenically, that they should be in it.
Okay, great.
Great answer.
I agree. Well, gents, any other questions that we need to cover before we close things down for the night?
None that I can think of.
I'm good as well.
I feel like I've been rambling on the entire time, guys. I'm sorry.
Well, that's what we brought you on to do.
Guest.
Yeah, you're the guest.
To ramble.
Yeah, you're supposed to. You're good. You've done a great job. So yeah, just really, really good stuff there. Any other group news, Jim, before we start doing our reviewing social media stuff?
So this show will be up in a couple of weeks. We're doing this at the end of January. But by the time it's up, there's a possibility that we'll have T-shirts ready to go out to our first round of supporters and members of the group and podcast listeners and whatnot. So we're going to talk on, you don't know this yet, Chris and Alberto, but I want to figure out if there's something we can do, like selfies of people wearing their Keto Man's Club T-shirts or what exactly. So stay tuned for that in the coming couple of episodes.
Absolutely. Definitely want to see our guys sporting their stuff. We will hopefully be seeing those shirts in hand there in Austin, at least within the next week or so. So yeah, that's pretty much it. We've still got people almost by the hour joining both groups at this point, or are asking to, and both groups are growing in bounds. And that brings us to how you can connect with us and whatnot. First of all, Zach, how can people connect with you best?
Well, I mean, you can always message me on Facebook. I have my email address too, which is twnzwilliams@gmail.com.
Zach, thanks for that. And hopefully people will reach out to you because I think that you're an excellent resource in a lot of different ways. People can connect with with everything Keto Man's Club via our website. We've got all the links to our social network connections, our Facebook groups, the Facebook page for the podcast, everything at theketomansclub.com. That includes my Instagram, which is at DuckmanKeto. Alberto?
The group, as per usual, and I actually changed my Instagram handle by a little bit. It's now l.ketocholo, so that would be the next best place to get a hold of me.
Okay, and Jim?
Mine is Jim Inman Jr., Jim Inman Jr. on Instagram.
Yep. So we're pretty connectable. You've got plenty of ways to reach us. There is an Instagram for the podcast, and that is at Keto Man's Club Podcast. So go ahead and follow that. You can email us any questions that you have. We've had a couple of inquiries via the email recently, and we definitely encourage you to reach out that way if you'd like. That's ketomansclubpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail at 512-518-6161. And we'd love to hear from you there as well if you would like. Feel free to reach out with any questions, any comments, ideas that you might have. We love to hear from our listeners. If you would take a few moments to go out to Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or a review, even if that's not where you listen to our podcast. If you have a device that interfaces with that, it would help the algorithm quite a lot. Just a quick rating, a quick comment, it goes a long way. We've had a couple of those recently, some of them from Japan, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what I heard.
Yeah. So good. Getting feedback is a good thing, regardless of the form of the feedback. So thank you for the support and the feedback and all of that. So I think that's it for this week. Zach, once again, thanks for coming and joining us. Lots of great insight, and you got a great story that I hope will inspire a whole lot of other people to push past their internal limits and find the best health that they can find for themselves. That's it for this week. Until next week, make sure to eat meat, lift heavy, sleep, and repeat. Thank you for joining us for the Keto Man's Club podcast. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Would you help us spread the word about the Keto Man's Club by sharing with your friends and family? We're available on all podcast platforms, so just search for Keto Man's Club and you'll find us. If you would like to connect with us, you can do so a number of ways. Our web address leads to our Facebook group, theketomansclub.com. That's TheKetoMansClub.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at Keto Man's Club Podcast. Lastly, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to reach out via email to KetoMansClubPodcast@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to hanging out with you again next week.